The Sermon on the Mount. Well, welcome to you. What I thought I'd do is give a personal interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. And not only is it a personal interpretation, but it's a reinterpretation. I keep reinterpreting it, But this is a personal reinterpretation based on my Kejawen beliefs. Now, this is part of a new section to the magic of Java called The Real Magic of Java. In this new section, I'm going to focus on real people performing what they believe to be real magic in Java. I'll attempt to explain some of the elements of this Javanese magic, particularly what I describe as the Kejawen elements. However, I need to warn you that inevitably my explanations will be partial. Maybe sometimes some elements of what I say will be incorrect, for which I profusely apologise. But this reflects the oral tradition of magic in Java, the mystery, and at times, I have to admit, subterfuge surrounding the practice of magic in Java. Please accept my apologies, but I do hope you enjoy this new section. Adultery. You've heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And this causes me, and I guess many of you, the greatest anguish, not least as I'm a serial sinner. Religious authorities and most of us argue that social conditions are very different to the time of Jesus. But does this mean that we should simply accept these changes? Indeed, are not our changed morals indicative of how the narcissist's view of love has affected our most important institutions? That love has been commodified, love has become something that can be bought and sold. So Jesus is saying that we should not even lust after someone. And if you think about it, this has to be true. But I at least find this very challenging. We can make arguments about consent, but what does consent really mean? Indeed, I think it emphasises that it's our thoughts and our motives that God will ultimately judge. So it's not just what we do. He goes on, "If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for the whole of your body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better that you lose one part of your body than the whole of your body go to the hell." Now this hints at what I describe as my daily jihad. That evil, or as I like to call it, bad or a lack of light, is within us all, and something that we must struggle with every day. Particularly thinking about other women, lusting about other people. That we must take out those elements of ourselves which are sinful in order for us to enter the kingdom of heaven. So this really is the daily struggle. It is a difficult one, of course it is. But it is what I see as being my daily struggle, my daily jihad. That those parts of me that I know are imperfect, I must seek to make better. And isn't this really about us suppressing the ego? For without ego, and if we were really guided by the light, we'd not seek to wrong anyone, including those our wives, those we commit adultery with, those we lust over. So, it seems to me that all relationships are, to some extent, power relationships. That all relationships are, to a degree, getting our will over others. which is what I call black magic. So he's really talking about the contract of marriage being sacred because we've agreed to exchange our wills and exchange many things with our partners. But this shouldn't apply. This shouldn't apply to sort of casual sex, to one-night stands, etc. And this theme goes on in divorce. It has been said anyone who divorces his wife must get a certificate of divorce. But I tell you, anyone that divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, I think this will trouble us all. But again, it highlights how we should approach everything with God's love. Now, I endured 20 years of psychopathic abuse, and the only remedy is no contact. But it seems to me, this seems to suggest that we're being called to find another solution, however difficult this may prove to be. Now, this is probably an off-the-walls reflection, and I don't necessarily believe it, or not all of it. But Kejawen teaches us that our sperm is unborn children. Indeed, it's often used as a sacrifice in magical rituals, as Aleister Crowley indeed did. And my own experience of this, shortly after moving to Jakarta, we were encouraged by our neighbours to throw a New Year's party and invited all our neighbours. A little known to me that one of the neighbours, well, she did two things actually. The first thing she did was she put a lipstick-stained tissue on our bed for my wife to see it, so that my wife believed that I'd been kissing somebody, at least kissing somebody else. But the other thing is she helped herself to a pile of used tissues in our waste paper bin. Now, she might simply have thought that those tissues contained my snot or some other bodily function, but they did contain my sperm, and we believed that that was how they held power over us, and were able to use black magic against us. Taking it further, some magicians believe that by leaving our sperm in others, we're exchanging auras. And that this can cause problems, especially for women who've been promiscuous. So in other words, that, if we do take this idea that our sperm is our unborn babies, then therefore we're leaving a consciousness within a woman. And, it might not affect them for years. But at some point, or particularly if there's a lot of different consciousnesses inside them, then it can cause all sorts of problems, particularly as they get older. That's not to say it doesn't cause problems for men. That sounds like I'm saying it's okay for men to be promiscuous, and I'm certainly not. Because also, the man has given away some consciousness there. And that will affect them as they get older as well. But I think it's probably more dangerous for women. Oath. Again, you have heard that it was said to people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you've made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Now, this seems to me to be full of mystical significance. It seems to confirm that manifesting really does work, and I believe it does. That if when we manifest we call on spirits, deities, God, or something connected with God, it's even more powerful. But I think it also hints that there may be a price to pay. Now, I simply see this as karma, as that the universe seeks balance. So if we ask for something and are granted, then we need to pay a forfeit. I'm not necessarily talking about a sacrifice, although this could be construed, but simply that there are blessings, that our blessings are balanced with our turmoils. It also highlights the importance of language. Now, I'm no ceremonial magician, but what I do know is that what we say is very important, and that we should be much more guarded with our words. So it's suggesting there's a real power to words, particularly when we speak them out loud. And I think it's a big warning about that. Eye for an eye. You've heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you. Do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. And now, perhaps before I say anything, I ought to say this eye for an eye concept, as it was interpreted in Jesus' day, was about recompense. So it wasn't so much if supposing you've cut off someone's hand. It wasn't that you should have your hand cut off, but if you've cut off somebody's hand and they're no longer able to work, then you have to support them and their family. So it's not the sort of evil thing that you might, well, it could be, but it's not the evil thing that I think it's come into modern parlance as meaning. But what I think it's saying, that even if we follow man-made laws, we're not absolved from our sins, as only God can grant absolution. And again, this is the way, by being generous, by showing love, this is the way we defeat our adversary, defeat black magic and our adversaries. We do so with love. But this seems to take it further, doesn't it? Because it urges us to treat everyone with love and compassion. Love your enemies. You've heard it said, love your neighbour and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteousness. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. And this seems to very much follow on from an eye, because it does say that we need to approach everything and everybody with love. And I personally see this as being about narcissists and psychopaths. And how do we find a way of incorporating them within our world? Now remember, it's not about necessarily giving in to them, although he is saying turn the other cheek for sure. But I think it's about a way that we need to find a way of, they're all humans. God put them on the earth. So we need to find a way of living with them on this earth. And interestingly, he specifically mentions the pagans, who do try to treat everyone with compassion. Whatever you might think, that pagan philosophy does try and treat everyone with compassion. But a very strong bit running through much of paganism is that if we are crossed, we must stand up for ourselves. And this is really saying, no, submit to God, submit to the universe, and let them deal with these issues, not you. Don't try and control the universe. Giving to the needy. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in synagogues and on the streets to be honoured by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that you are giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what you have done in secret, will reward you. So God knows that there's no need. God knows all, so there's no need to draw attention to your own good. It also refers to karma, to give with an open heart, because that will be repaid by the universe. And thinking of a contemporary sort of reflection on this, what does it tell us about virtual signalling? I'm always getting into trouble because I speak my mind. I'm always getting into trouble with people who seem to be standing up for others, for people they're not. Now, for goodness sake, you will not find anybody more anti-racist than I am. So I'm not coming out with a protection of racism or anything of the sort, but it seems to me that the world is now full of people who virtual signal. People who stand up and say, oh, well, if I was such and such, I wouldn't be happy with this. In fact, yeah, I used to be a focus group moderator, and a lot of the work I did was on social issues. And I'd always get, particularly white middle class people, standing up and saying they didn't think this was a good idea for black people. And I used to have a wonderful, wonderful way of cutting straight through it. And I'd just say, I invited you to this focus group to find out your opinions. If I wanted to find out the opinions of black people, I would have invited them. And, there is so much of this virtual signalling, scoring of points, and I think this is a real warning against it. Of course, this also tells us that we should be charitable, that we should give to the needy. Now, as a Muslim, that's still very much a part of our religion and part of our religious obligations. And I'm not trying to accuse other religions of not doing it, far from it. But, it's something that we need, something that we have to remember, that giving and being generous of the spirit should be very central to our beliefs. And yes, it's telling us to do it, not necessarily secretly, but don't make a big show of it. Do it with an open heart. Give generously. Give with an open heart. Don't expect something back, even though you probably will be repaid by the universe. That's not the reason to do it. You do it because of people are in need, and if people are in need, then you give. In Kejawen we have this I forget the exact saying, it's quite a long one, but if somebody needs shelter, you must give them shelter. If somebody needs food, you must give them food. It's very much central to most religions, and this is just a reminder of it, isn't it? Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this. Because these are real events, I can't say how regularly I'm going to be adding to this subsection. Because I don't know how often they're going to occur. But I would imagine that they'll be at least every couple of months, maybe monthly. Now, if you'd like to know when that's going to be, please subscribe and hit the button, and you'll get information on when new ones are released. I'd love you to make comments and ask questions, and if you do, I'll attempt to answer them as honestly as I can. I promise you that there's no attempt on this channel, or this part of this channel, of me, there'll be no attempt by me at any type of subterfuge. I'll try to be as honest and open as I possibly can be. Inevitably, there will be some of you who disagree with my interpretation, and, you know, we can agree to disagree. But what you're seeing is real stuff here. What I'd love you to do, if you enjoyed this, is look at my other sections. Particularly, I've written novels about magic in Java, and they contain much more information in them, especially me trying to understand the theories of magic, the psychology of it, and I try and intersperse them with a sort of spiritual dimension. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and God bless you.